The world will be watching. All right, what does this all mean? Let's bring in our think tank tonight to break it all down. Joining us, criminal defense attorney Michael Bixson, U.S. Air Force judge advocate, retired. Lieutenant Colonel Sally Stanton is with us as well. And Ecleynne Mercy, criminal defense attorney, with us also. Great to have everyone aboard tonight. Michael, I want to start with you. Baby blue. She's wearing baby blue to court every day. It's a different outfit, different shirts. She's not wearing the same clothes every time, Michael. But let me ask you, is that a good choice in front of a jury? Does that make her look like she's a victim, like she's very meek and mild and could never harm a fly?
It really brings out the blue in the mask. I mean, look, what she's wearing now might not be what she's going to wear in front of a jury. And I don't know the image that she's exactly trying to, put out there. Normally I don't want something super bright or showy for a client of mine if we're going in front of a jury. Prior to that point, though, if it's just a judge, that's different. Now, obviously, this case is, nationwide media coverage. And, everyone's seeing how she's dressing, how she's putting herself out there. So even for something like this, normally I would want to tone it down a bit for a client of mine. All
right. Let me ask you, Ecleynne, about the joinder issue, okay? Mm-hmm. Because these are two lovebirds. I mean, they're soulmates. I mean, they had to go through so much to be together, yet Chad Daybell doesn't want her on trial with him. Why is that? Is he gonna throw her under the bus? Is he gonna point the finger at the woman who gave up so much to be with him? The woman who listened to all of his prophecies? The woman who followed him wherever he went? And now all of a sudden, Chad Daybell is going after Lori? Is that what's gonna happen here, Ecleynne?
What's love got to do with it? That's exactly what's going to happen. He is going for his self. It is self-promotion at this point in time. Only the strong survive, and he is playing the game full throttle. You do want to separate. You do want a different, you do want, it's going to be him against her. It's going to be he said, she said, and I am here for it. It is going to be entertaining. And then with her wearing the cultist blue, the cult-like blue, I am here. I am ready. It's going to be terrible, but it's going to be good.
That blue worked, I think, for Chris Brown. Chris Brown wore that color. It worked for him. Lieutenant Colonel, let me ask you, for a jury, right? Ultimately, I'm concerned about a jury. I want them to have the best opportunity to figure out what happened. Is it better for a jury to have both defendants together or to have two separate trials? Where do they get to the truth?
Well, if you're the prosecutor, I think you definitely want to try them together. If you're the defense, you want to separate them, because you want to play them off of each other. As a defense counsel, I want my client to have their day in court. I want them to point the finger at the other person and say, it's not me, it's her, or it's him. If I'm her, I'm saying he sucked me into this cult. He did it. The kids were found on his property. I had nothing to do with it. And if I'm him, I say, oh my God, she sucked me in. I'm her fifth husband. She's the femme fatale. They were her children. I had nothing to do with it. And then if they're together, they point at Uncle Alex. Uncle Alex was a bad guy. He did everything.
They look so happy there, don't they? They look so happy. Michael, think about what this case was about and what we've heard from the beginning. It was always about them figuring out how to be together. How to be together. Because when they met, they were both married to other people, had lots of obligations. They met at this conference, and then all of a sudden, they had these common interests about the world ending and zombies and everything else. They have a lot in common. They love Hawaii. Yet now when push comes to shove, it's starting to look a lot more like they're going to be going at each other. Now, is this just for show, or do you think this is like for real? That if Lori Vallow gets a not guilty verdict, she's looking for number 6.
I mean, look, just because they're or at least trying to sever the two cases doesn't mean that they're trying to play off each other. I mean, that's usually one of the elements when you're trying to sever cases, but it's not the only reason. I mean, oftentimes you just don't want them together in the same trial. There's a number of factors, but obviously guilt by association is one of the biggest problems. Not to mention if one of them actually decides to testify, that's a huge problem for the other co-defendant. So, procedurally, there's, aside from the relationship, there could be a number of reasons why they don't want the trials together.
And could one of those reasons be, Ecleynne, that Mr. Doomsday Prophet said the world was going to end July 22nd and it didn't?
Yeah, that could definitely be a reason. And I think that helps, I don't know who it helps, but it's definitely going to be interesting. I don't know what's going on. I would assume that they would want, because of the craziness of the story, to try to keep the crazy together and then just let the jury figure it out. But, I guess they're going, they're going to the traditional route, which is a defense attorney in this specific case. I would just file a motion to sever just because of how similar the facts are and how, we don't know anybody's story yet. All we heard is what we found out during the arraignment. So we don't even know what type of defense that
Well, I can tell you part of the story. It involves the second coming and 144,000 following Lori and Chad. All right.
But Vinny, I'm telling you, though, you don't want that much crazy between both co-defendants in one courtroom. I completely agree with Ecleynne. You want to get them as far apart as possible. There's only so much crazy that you can put in front of a jury. So I think she's completely right.
We shall see what happens. All right. Hey, folks, the newest episode of the Court TV podcast is out now. This week, we're breaking down the latest developments in the Doomsday Cult Mom case. Lori Vallow Daybell and her 5th husband, Chad, are separated behind bars, as we know. But could the newlywed couple turn on each other? Ashley Banfield joins me this week to talk about it.
You're buying kind of what Ashton was saying, that you cover up an accident to make it look like murder?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
I really believe she's that kind of person. I believe her lying was so exquisite. Her ability to lie and create lies, fantastical scenario lies, that she came up with the fantastical scenario of, if I just make it look like she was abducted and murdered, I can skate. At least I can skate on going to prison. I will never skate on what I've done. I will never skate on the fact that I killed someone I love and that I was so selfish in the desire to just go party. I never meant this to happen. I just don't want to go to prison for life and no one will ever believe me.
Did you notice a little switcherooski I pulled on you there? Yeah, that's Ashley talking about a different mom. Top mom, Casey Anthony, which is the subject of the premiere of her new show, Judgment with Ashley Banfield, Sunday at 8 p.m. Also, our 13th juror question involves cult mom versus top mom. Who's a better mother? Go to my Facebook page. And this week's episode of the Court TV podcast is now available wherever you listen. And you can always find it, of course, on CourtTV.com.
I think it should stay here. It absolutely should stay here. This is the community that's affected by the policing problem that caused his death in the first place. I think it's only right for the community to have it here where everything happened and where the effect from it is.
All right, that's one of the big issues on the agenda in Minneapolis. Tomorrow, a huge day in the George Floyd murder case. All 4 defendants are going to be at the courthouse. They all filed motions and responses to motions involving many different issues. Julia Janae is in Minnesota and has the latest for us tonight.
Starting first thing in the morning, these parties will be at the Hennepin County Family Justice Center to argue the motions that will determine how this case moves forward. And it's something that the area is bracing for. There is a protest that is planned to be outside of the courthouse, and these businesses have been putting up boards on their windows, been putting up barriers and blocking off streets in order to brace for what could happen if those protests turn violent. We expect that all 4 defendants will be at the court courthouse and in the courtroom. Derek Chauvin has been out of the mix for the defendants that have been in the courtroom because he is incarcerated, but this is one of the first times that he has been ordered to actually be present in front of the judge. The state has a major motion on the table to get these cases joined together. They want the trial to go forward against all of them at the same time, something that the defense says would unduly prejudice them. And those defendants all are trying to get their cases dismissed and for the venue to be changed and to be moved out of Minneapolis. So a hefty order of things that this court is going to be looking at starting tomorrow. And there's a possibility that the judge could make those decisions from the bench. Vinny, back to you.
Julia Janae in Minnesota tonight. She'll be there tomorrow, and we'll have a report on everything that happens. And I mean, really big day in the way it's going to impact how this trial plays out. But one thing that she was talking about there, the preparations for tomorrow, which is not the trial, it's just motions, right? They're boarding up businesses and the courthouse itself. I mean, what's going to happen at the trial? And is this potentially a reason why it should be moved from Minneapolis? Because of what could potentially happen, the safety of everyone involved. You're boarding up the courthouse before pretrial motions. Let's bring back in our think tank. Lieutenant Colonel Sally Stenton, let me ask you, the fact that they are boarding up the courthouse tonight, preparing for the motions hearing tomorrow, and one of those issues is whether or not the trial should be in that courthouse or not. Is that a reason to move it? Safety, potential protests and riots?
Well, since there have been protests all over the country, actually all over the world, I think wherever you have it, you're going to have the same issue. So no, I think safety is going to be an issue anywhere. And I, like the gentleman said that was interviewed, I think it should be in Hennepin County. There's probably a couple million people in that county that are potential jurors, and they can get, I think, a jury pool from that county and have it there. That is not a reason to move it, in my opinion.
Ecleynne Mercy, you know, let's say, hypothetical, I have no idea what's going to happen, but let's say things get out of control and there is rioting, actual riot, not protests, but actual rioting tomorrow while this hearing is happening or after this hearing happens. Does that then become an issue and a reason to move this case out of Minneapolis?
Unfortunately, it doesn't, because I mean the world is on fire. There are things happening everywhere. Every city is getting their share. I don't think that it's enough to move it. We're having issues and talks about race, so we have to expect these. We have to expect the backlash. We have to expect people to get angry. I don't think that they'll get angry or protests or riots. Again, we don't know who is doing the riots, but I think that the only thing that people would get upset about would be if a motion to dismiss would be granted. I think that would be the only reason why it can go haywire.
And that is one of the motions. As we know, those are rarely successful, but you never know. You never know. Michael Bixson, one of the other big issues, joinder. Should this be 4 trials or 1 trial?
I think it should be.
What do you think is the fairest? And we'll give the jury, same question that I asked at last segment, we'll give the jury the best opportunity to figure out what happened.
Without a doubt, I think there should be 4 separate trials. And make no mistake, it's going to cost more, it's going to take longer, it's going to be a lot more effort on everyone's part to make sure that it's done. But what you do when you actually have 4 separate trials is you're going to make sure that every single defendant is afforded their own defense. And they're not going to be complicated by facts and law and different issues from the other co-defendants. It's going to be a mess trying to sort through the different ones and the different, they have different charges, each one of them. Well, at least 3 of them. And it makes it very difficult for a jury to sort through. And then not to mention the guilt by association, as well as a number of other factors. I think it should be entirely up to the defense as to whether or not it's going to be severed or not. This is not an issue that should be with the prosecution or even have to be argued by the judge. If the defense want it severed, it should be, because otherwise it shifts the burden to the defense and it makes it much harder for them to argue their case.
Lieutenant Colonel, you agree?
Actually, I do. And I think Ecleynne and I are on the same page as far as whether there should be a change of venue. This is what the protests, the peaceful protests are about. The rioting and the looting, that's completely separate. That has nothing to do with protecting the rights of George Floyd. You know, peaceful protesters want justice in this case, and that's what the court system is there to give. So, and I agree with Mike. These need to be 4 separate trials, and that's how it should be done. And the defense has that right, and they should be given. The defendants have that right, and they should be given that right to present their cases individually.
Ecleynne, I saw you nodding your head.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's like a setup for an appeal. I think it's just a setup for an appeal, especially with the publicity and the media and all that. You want 4 separate trials. You want that 4 separate convictions. You do not want it to be muddied up. It's really hard to muddy it up when you have 4 separate trials. So I agree with both my colleagues.
So how do you think the judge handles this tomorrow? Because this judge has made rulings from the bench before, but you've got a lot of things to talk about. Venue's a big one. Joinder's a big one. Motions to dismiss, huge. Then there's the issue of what prior history of George Floyd will be allowed in the trial, if any. You know, they're talking about the 2019 arrest, the body camera footage from the 2019 arrest. How do you think the judge handles all this, Ecleynne, knowing that the world is watching? Will the judge make rulings tomorrow on the spot, or just listen to the arguments?
I'm so sorry. I think I mean, just based on everything and the amount of motions, I doubt he'll be ruling on the spot on certain ones. I hope that he rules from the bench for the motion to dismiss. I do believe that it should be denied, because there's too much evidence for any of these charges to be denied. So, I mean, for any of these charges to be dismissed. So I think the motion to dismiss is a big one that should be from the bench. I think the other ones may take some time for evaluation and further research. But yeah, that's what I think. The motion to dismiss is the one from the bench.
Lieutenant Colonel, how much can these decisions change the course of the trial?
Well, obviously, the motion to dismiss is the big one, and that would completely change the course of the trial if he granted it, which I agree with Ecleynne completely. That should be made from the bench. I think it will bring a lot of calm to the city, especially when he denies it, which I think, I hate to say it's a foregone conclusion, but I can't believe that he would dismiss these charges for any of them. I think there's certainly enough evidence to go forward to trial with them. As far as the other ones, whether the evidence from George Floyd's past convictions is going to come in, that could have a pretty big impact with the jurors. If it's allowed in, and I think that's something that he is not going to decide from the bench. As Ecleynne said, I think that's going to need some research. And another thing I think is that is something that he might delay on giving his ruling on. It's something, again, you want to keep calm in the city, and so you're going to make these rulings probably a little later. Other than the motion to dismiss. You don't need to put everything out at one time. Let justice take its course. Do it like a regular trial.
Yeah, it like a regular trial, but it's not, right? The world is watching, and the world is reacting to this thing.
It is, but you know what? We have a justice system in this country, and everybody deserves their day in court. And the judge should be treating it like a normal trial, because that's what it is. These are defendants that are going to get their day in court.
All right, folks. Of course, we're going to have full coverage of this tomorrow night as well. But coming up next, we're going to go on the docket, one of the cases that we're tracking here on Court TV that happened way before the George Floyd case, but involves a police officer killing a suspect, shooting him in the back. We've got the video. That's next. On the docket tonight, a case out of Nashville, Tennessee, involving a police officer who was pursuing a suspect, was pursuing him on foot. Now, he's running through a neighborhood, and all of the surveillance cameras in the neighborhood captured most of this pursuit. He ended up shooting and killing the suspect, but shot him in the back. He's been charged with murder. Julie Grant has more.
Officer Andrew Delkey and Daniel Hambrick crossed paths for the first time on July 26, 2018. But only one of these men would walk away alive. The fatal encounter began on the streets of North Nashville. Officer Delkey was on patrol, searching for a stolen vehicle. At some point, while Hambrick pulled inside an apartment complex and took off, allegedly armed with a gun, surveillance video shows the men, both 25 years old at the time, in a full sprint. They round a corner, and then you see Officer Delkey stop, plant his feet, and fire at Hambrick as he runs away. Hambrick falls and never gets back up. According to reports, Hambrick was hit 3 times, twice in the back and once in the back of the head.
And I need judgment either. That's not my role.
City officials forced to respond as community outcry intensified.
My role is to make sure that on the front end, we are doing the absolute best we can as a community when it comes to policing.
The district attorney releasing video of the shooting, hoping its bid to be transparent will build trust with the Black community.
The police officer fired 4 times. 3 of those bullets ripped Daniel apart.
But the move is a little solace for Hambrick's grieving family.
My daughter is now thinking that the police is the enemy.
According to a warrant, Officer Delkey said he saw Hambrick holding a gun and that Hambrick didn't comply with verbal commands. Despite his claims, prosecutors filed charges shortly after the release of the video. Hambrick's family faced Delkey during a pretrial hearing. Defense attorneys suggesting Delkey was simply following police practice from the moment he squared his feet and pulled the trigger.
He's doing what he's taught to do, that this is the most serious thing the police do, and if they have to use deadly force, they want to hit what they're aiming at.
But the prosecution countered, questioning the witness about Delkey's decision to use deadly force.
You're in agreement with me that that was his decision to make at that point, that was the decision that he made.
And I'm in agreement he made the decision because the subject had a gun in his hand and wouldn't follow directions to put it down and was possibly threatening people in the area and Officer Delkey.
The judge ruled the case should go to a grand jury.
Mr. Delkey, is there anything you want to say to the family?
And in January 2019, Officer Andrew Delkey was indicted for first-degree murder.
Her son is gone for no reason. No reason. He's gone because Officer Delkey.
The Fraternal Order of Police is standing by Delkey, saying the prosecution is politically motivated and could lead to officers second-guessing themselves in life or death situations.
Is it worth putting everything that we have on the line when we know that our city's not going to support us when we're right? And absolutely, I think the question is no, it's not.
The biggest question since the indictment is who should hear Delkey's case.
The hearts and minds of Davidson County residents have solidified into 2 intractable camps.
To support its motion to move the trial out of the county, the defense conducted polling that shows many residents have already made up their minds about the case. Results showing an even split between guilt and innocence.
Davidson County jury is unlikely to provide the fair trial guaranteed to Officer Delkey by the Constitution.
A change of venue is not warranted because there are fair and impartial jurors in Davidson County, Tennessee.
The court agreed with the state, so the trial won't be moved. For now, Officer Andrew Delkey remains decommissioned, free on bond, and facing the possibility of life behind bars if he's convicted.
Once again, this shooting took place pre-George Floyd, but obviously the trial will take place post-George Floyd. It was supposed to happen earlier this year, but got delayed. Then COVID hit, and here we are. Let's bring back in our think tank. Michael Bixson, let me ask you, looking at this case and trying to figure out what are the key factors here in determining whether or not this is murder. something less, or no crime at all? What do you see as the key factors in this one?
There's actually a Supreme Court case that, ironically enough, actually came out of Tennessee. And it addresses what happened in this case almost verbatim. And it talks about how, essentially, if an officer is pursuing a fleeing suspect and has some reasonable faith basis that they're armed and that, they could cause injury to either to the officer or someone else, then they are allowed to use force, even deadly force, against that individual. And that sort of really speaks to this case. Now, morally, do I think what he did was right? No, you shouldn't shoot someone in the back. That's pretty clear. But what the law says, I think, is very much in favor of Officer Delkey. And I think that's probably the number one factor going forward. Now, law aside, he's going to have to deal with a very contentious jury. I mean, I think at this point, the community has sort of already made up their mind. And sometimes it doesn't matter what the black and white letter of the law says. It matters what the community thinks. And we know this is going to stay right there where it is.
Go ahead, Ecleynne. I heard you.
Is that?
Yes, absolutely. I heard you, Ecleynne. I know you want to jump in there.
So here's the thing. I disagree with Michael, because the law is Tennessee versus Gardner states that, under the Fourth Amendment, that police officer can use deadly force if they know that the suspect is dangerous and will cause will cause injury to other people. He was running away. I think that the issue right now, and if it was to stop the possible suspect, one bullet. No, he did 3 bullets, and one of them actually hit him in the back of the head. That is murder. That was clear, because you weren't trying to stop him. You were trying to kill him. That's the problem. Officers are supposed to protect and serve, not judge and convict and sentence to death on the street. And that's the problem. They are supposed to help. The reason why we have Tennessee versus Gardner is to prevent officers from taking the law into their own hands. And then my issue is, let's be clear. I mean, I'm going to say it, cardio. It seems that he was just tired from running after him. We need officers that can run. Suspects will flee. We have 30 seasons of cops to tell you that man should not be dead, that he did not pose that type of risk in order to get a bullet in the back of his head. I don't see any arguments. I don't see that he's justified. I do believe it's murder.
Lieutenant Colonel, go ahead.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
All right. To Michael's point, I disagree with him and agree with Ecleynne on the point of, one, from what I've read about this case, the officer was going around during the day. He thought he was following a car that didn't want to drive in front of a police car, and he had been looking for it throughout the day, trying to get it to do something so he could stop it. And he ended up following Mr. Delkey's car, and it wasn't even the right car. So I don't know where it was a suspected stolen car comes into it. That's a new fact to me. So I'm not even sure what he suspected him of when he was chasing him down. And then, but to Eckleyne's point, I have to disagree with her, because I worked in law enforcement. I was a law enforcement officer. And what the general public, I hear this a lot, why don't they shoot to wound? Why don't they shoot him in the leg? Or why don't they try and shoot him, shoot a warning shot? That's not what you're taught. When you pull your weapon and you fire it, it's deadly force, and you shoot to kill. So I don't think he should have shot the officer. I think that was completely an unlawful use of deadly force, and I think homicide is the correct charge. But to Eckleyne's point, he was shooting to kill, because that's what you're trained to do. And in the piece that Julie granted, when the guy was testifying, it says, well, he was following his training. That's not your training. You don't run after somebody that you suspect of stealing a car and gun them down. He says he had a gun. Well, we have a Second Amendment in this country. Whether you believe in and gun control, which I actually do. But, we have Kyle Rittenhouse, who a couple weeks ago allegedly killed 2 people and is walking down the street with cops, people shouting, he's the shooter. And he walks down with an AR-15 and nobody does anything. This guy, he gets chased by this police officer because he's carrying a weapon.
All right. As you can tell, folks, this is why we are tracking this trial. A lot of issues. It's not going to be an easy one for the jury, not an easy one for anyone involved. When we come back, oh, by the way, I got to give you the tentative trial date. We have one. It's February 15th, 2021. February 15th, 2021. Tentative trial date. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on it. When we come back, the battle of the moms. Who's a better mom? Lori Vallow Daybell or Casey Anthony? That's a tough one, right? 13th juror when we return.
Skeletal remains of a small child located late this afternoon.
This was the trial of the most hated mother in America.
At the center of this case, we had a little girl who went missing. Mom was out partying when she should have been looking for her daughter.
She took her life and disposed of her body in a swamp.
She started pointing the finger at her father.
Why did George do this?
This was the craziest case I'd ever seen.
Florida versus Casey Anthony.
Judgment with Ashley Banfield. Series premiere Sunday at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
That's right, folks. Sunday, Ashley Banfield's brand new program here on Court TV premieres, 8 o'clock, different case every week. The first week, though, you saw they're doing Top Mom, Casey Anthony. That'll be the focus on the first week. Also, big news today, Lori Vallow Daybell, the cult mom, was in court for her arraignment. Take a look.
As I understand it, having waived the reading of the information, then now is the opportunity, ma'am, to enter a plea of either guilty or not guilty. How would you like to reflect your plea?
Your Honor, on behalf of Mrs. Daybell, she enters a not guilty plea to both charges and a request for a pretrial and a jury trial.
All right, so there it was today. I got Cult Mom today. We got Top Mom on Sunday, and it got me thinking, who's a better mom? I'm trying to keep it positive, right, as much as I can. Neither one's been convicted of murdering their children. I mean, Casey Anthony was found not guilty, and Lori Vallow Daybell hasn't been charged. So who's a better mom? Trying to keep it positive. That was my 13th juror question. We begin with our 13th juror comment of the day. Comes from Dell, who writes, that's comparing a psychopath to a sociopath. There is no mom in either of them. My comments are not made based upon the charges or the findings. They are based on their actions after their children went missing. That determined neither of them had an ounce of maternal instincts in them to begin with. Michael Bixson, let me ask you something. Lori Vallow Daybell is kind of ending up in the same place where Casey Anthony was, 10 years ago. And could we end up with the same result in her case? That at the end of the day, no one is held responsible for the death of her children?
It's possible. I think it's a little far-fetched from what we've seen so far. Is it possible? Yes, but it would be a stretch. Is it possible that she walks away with a not guilty? Sure, but at the end of the day, I have a feeling that there's going to be some time involved in her case. But I can tell you, without a doubt, I would not want to be the child of either of these people. Adopt me, please.
And again, the question is not who's a worse mom, it's who's a better mom. Is it Top Mom or Cult Mom? Here's what Doris is writing tonight. The only reason that Cult Mom is just a smidgen worse, so I guess that would make Top Mom a smidgen better, is that Cult Mom believes she is God and can decide who lives or dies. She even looks like she is smiling in her mugshot. I think she is responsible for more than just her kids' deaths. Wow. Lieutenant Colonel, how do you see these two moms?
It's sad that they even get the moniker of mom. That the term better and mom in the same sentence with those two women, you can't even use it. I mean, that's like trying to compare Susan Smith and Andrea Yates. they're despicable women. I'm talking about Casey Anthony and Lori Vallow. Although, like you said, Casey Anthony was acquitted, that doesn't mean she's innocent. She was just found not guilty because the state couldn't prove the case against her. And Lori Vallow hasn't been charged yet with murder of JJ and Tylee, although she has been charged. As Mike said, I think she will be facing some sort of time, because I can't believe that she won't be convicted of something. She's faced with several different charges from different, she's still facing the child endangerment and neglect charges from when she wouldn't say where her children were. And then she's got these charges today at the arraignment for concealment of evidence and obstruction. So, she's facing much different charges. And if they are even ever charged, if she's even ever charged with homicide, because, they may not be able to get there.
They may not. We shall see. It's continuing. Barbara writes tonight, this is a well thought out response tonight. Lori is the better mom. She was taking care of them, although very dysfunctional and selfish, until Chad. Casey was young and stupid and wanted to party. I do think Casey's was by accident, although it was stupid. I think she just wanted the baby out for a while to party, but the chemical sucked up all the oxygen and she panicked. Neither are Mother of the Year. We can all agree to that. But Michael, do you, looking back, and it's coming up on Sunday on Ashley's show, do you think ultimately the death of Kaylee Marie in the Casey Anthony case was an accident?
That's a stretch. I don't think so. I think she was murdered. I really don't think it was an accident, unfortunately. And it's tough to say, who is worse, who has the higher body count at this point. I'm inclined to say it might be Lori. But either way, they're both terrible cases.
They are. But at the end of the day, I'm still amazed that the most hated woman in America, the jury put that aside and focused on the evidence that was presented. Michael Bixson, Lieutenant Colonel Sally Stenton, thank you both so much. We lost our feed with Ecleynne Mercy, but we thank her as well. Great job. Hey, big day tomorrow here on Court TV. Everything that's happening in Minnesota. We'll have live reports from Minneapolis. Really, a huge day. I can't stress it too much. That's it for now. I'm Vinny Politan. Have a great night. And as always, don't forget to hug the kids.